Hey everybody, it's Ed the Trainer back with you again to talk now about the changes that occurred in the testing requirements as of April 1st of 2013 to include the Uniform State Test, the UST, as a part of the federal component for NMLS testing versus the standalone Uniform State Test, or UST, that's used for those originators who've already passed the federal component in a previous month or year. Now, the Uniform State Test is a test that's been developed over the last handful of months and released in April of 2013 to cover more than 20 states, upwards now of 24, and by the end of the year we'll be closing in on 30 or just perhaps over 30 as more and more states choose to adopt the Uniform State Test as their testing requirement. Prior to the UST, every single state had its own state test that you had to pass along with a 100-question federal component test. So you passed a 100-question federal component test that covered federal laws, general mortgage knowledge, loan origination activities, and ethics. And then you had to go for whatever states you sought a license in to pass a particular state test, whether it was 45, 55, or 65 questions, before you could get your individual state license. One of the biggest misconceptions amongst loan originators is that there is a separate federal license and a separate state license. That's inaccurate. When you had to take individual state tests, part of the requirement of a state license was that you pass the federal component in addition to the state component. And once you had both passed, you could be eligible to apply and then be approved for a state license. The federal component, once you took it once and passed it, was good for all 50 states and several of the territories like Puerto Rico. But to get an individual state license, you then had to go and pass those state tests. Now what's happened is as of April of 2013 is that lots of these individual states have chosen to adopt the UST, the Uniform State Test, which is a 25-question test which will cover all of these states in general terms. And if you pass this one UST, this one Uniform State Test, after having passed the federal component, now this is for those loan originators who've already passed the federal component, at this point now you're eligible for licensure in any of those states that's covered by the UST. And that's assuming that if those states have additional education hour requirements for pre-licensing, that you finish those hours as well. Now, for those of you who are just getting started in the business, your option as far as testing goes will be to take the federal and UST component together. This is a 125-question test where they've just added the 25 UST questions directly to the 100-question federal component. And it's not offered to you in different portions. All 125 questions are mixed up. You could get 5 questions from federal law, 2 questions from the UST, 2 questions from loan origination activities, and so on and so forth in a random order. But the makeup of the test is 125 questions. 100 of those questions deal with the federal component, and 25 of those questions deal with specific material for the UST. And if you pass this entire test, at that point you've passed your federal component as well as the UST component, which would then allow you to become eligible, at least from the testing point, to be licensed in these 20-plus states currently. And as it continues to develop again and more states adopt the UST, you'd be eligible to seek a license in those states as well. I hope that helps. If you have any questions, you want to reach out to me, it's ed at edthetrainer.com. Ed at edthetrainer.com. We'll see you around.